Welcome back to the broadcast. On Thursday, February 11th, the Ministry of Health and Wellness received confirmation from the Ezra Long Laboratory of 278 new cases of COVID-19. This is from a batch of 617 tests conducted on samples taken during the period of January 29th to February 9th. Monday, February 8th, a total of 287 tests were conducted with 117 positive samples. Tuesday, February 9th, a total of 330 tests were conducted with 161 positive samples. The Ezra Long Laboratory continues to work to reduce the present backlog of COVID-19 samples. All of the 278 individuals were seen at various respiratory clinics in the communities where they were assessed and tested for COVID-19. As per existing COVID-19 testing protocols, each individual was placed in home quarantine by healthcare practitioners whilst awaiting the receipt of their COVID-19 test results. Confirmation was also received of the recovery of 17 individuals, bringing the total number of active cases in country to date to 973. 2 of the active cases are in critical care at the respiratory hospital, and all of the others are presently stable. The new cases now bring the total number of cases diagnosed in country to date to 2,415. In relating news, the Ministry of Health and Wellness has announced welcoming news to the heirs of returning nationals after the review and update of the National COVID-19 Response Policy. Making the decision to absorb a greater part of the cost of state quarantine, there has been a sizable reduction in the fees applied to returning nationals. We have more in this report. Returning nationals can breathe a sigh of relief after the Ministry of Health and Wellness reviewed and drastically changed the fees placed upon the travelers. On Friday, Public Relations Manager of the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Authority, Jeraine Georges, made the announcement that effective February 11, 2021, the government of St. Lucia is absorbing a greater part of the costs of state quarantine for returning nationals. This, she said, is in keeping with the ministry's updated national COVID-19 response policy.
And this is subsequent to routine reviews of the quarantine policy, which has noted infringements as it relates to home quarantine, and as such, this has been reduced to special circumstances only, as it will now transition to state-based quarantine facilities as much-needed vigilance is required. The daily fees announced in August by the government of St. Lucia indicated that single occupancy would have been $95 US per day, double occupancy $160, and triple occupancy $240. And double and triple occupancy applies to families within the same unit. These fees have now been reduced to $25, $45, and $65 US respectively.
Georges said there will be special arrangements in place for individuals who fall under a small group of categories.
The government, in acknowledging the nature of the COVID-19 pandemic, will continue to honor applications for financial exemptions, and that includes students who have completed their studies within 3 months and are returning home, and to persons who have traveled for medical care. The government is also considering dire socioeconomic needs, including the forced repatriation of nationals.
The SLTA rep said the usual policies implemented initially have not changed.
During the quarantine period, the policy still stands that returning nationals will be swabbed on the 7th day, and those receiving a negative PCR result and meet the criteria to thereafter quarantine at home will be given the permission to do so, of course, with the wearing of the Amber Solution watch and the BioIntelliSense sticker. Those who do not meet the requirements to quarantine at home following the 7-day swab will have to ensure that they are covered for the full 14-day period at the state quarantine. We want to remind our returning nationals and residents that only essential travel is encouraged at this time, and we want to also remind them that the portal for registration of travel, the listing of all of the protocols and the health screening declaration and all of the necessary forms as it relates to entry into St. Lucia can be found on the portal www.stlucia.org/COVID-19.
Georges said returning nationals are asked to cooperate as much as possible to ensure a smooth transition upon arrival into St. Lucia. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Rochelle Gonzalez. There has been a lot of opposition to the 90-day state of emergency. One of the concerns which have been echoed is that during the last SOE, the cases of gender-based violence increased and that there is a possibility that it may occur once again. These concerns were brought to Gender Relations Minister Dr. Gail Rigobert, who says while she acknowledges that, this time around may be different.
Pray to God that we do not see recurrence of the kinds of incidents we had during the lockdown with respect to gender-based violence. One of the things that came out of that ugly fact is that we were able to mobilize more resources from our Canadian partner, and so we've been able to construct a new facility, a larger safe house, to put it simply, to accommodate women who feel at risk, so that they do not have to feel stuck in that space where perhaps they feel very vulnerable or volatile.
She says during the previous SOE, packages were put together to assist women, and this time around, more services are available to assist women who may need it.
To put together some small economic packages for entrepreneurial women or women who may have lost their jobs and are at risk. So in reaching out in that sense, we're able to say to women, you do not have to stay there. There is an avenue out, and we are here for you. We also went the extra mile to provide telephone counseling for vulnerable women as well. Hopefully we do not see a spike in the incidents during this period, and the team stands ready to showcase the services available to women at risk, and in fact in the next week or so you'll be hearing even more about that.
That was Gender Relations Minister Dr. Gail Rigobert. In other news, women continue to be victims of gender-based violence. In St. Lucia, the latest suspicious death of a young woman found partially decomposed along the Pigeon Island Causeway has amplified calls to have measures in place to protect women. Gender Relations Minister Dr. Gail Rigobert says a lot of work has gone into improving policies as well as pumping resources to assist women.
On January 23rd, the body of a young woman was found in a decomposing state on the Pigeon Island Causeway. The Royal St. Lucia Police Force say they are still trying to actively identify the body. Activists have called for more to be done to protect women from such heinous crimes. On Tuesday, Minister for Gender Relations, Dr. Gail Rigobert, explained that a lot of work has been put into changing policies to help eliminate gender-based violence for the past 4 years.
So every time there was an incident, there was some report of some heinous gender-based violence-related crime, and you guys would come to me and say, well, as leader of the opposition or as a female MP, how do you feel about this? And often I heard myself remark that I was outraged, angry, that the loss of life or the injury, depending, was regrettable. As a policymaker, now that I am in office, what we have done, along with the sister agencies, is to ensure that there is more legislation, there are more regulations, there are more policies, and there are more services that could help to stem that practice.
Women's activists have clamored for years for the Domestic Act to be passed. Dr. Rigobert says the bill may not have been passed yet, however, it is well on its way to being completed.
Over the next few weeks, you will hear in greater detail the kinds of policies we've implemented, the packages of services, the collaborative effort among agencies in Ireland and with regional agencies as well, to ensure that we can reach out to those vulnerable women. Whereas we have not yet passed the new domestic violence bill, I am pleased to say that it is certainly farther along the pipeline now than it was when we first came in. It is one of those things that I urgently want to see implemented. I want to see implemented with great haste, but we urge two stakeholders to offer the feedback and ensure that there is buy-in even before we roll it out. But I'm very pleased with the progress we've made thus far.
She says during the course of the next month, there will be a lot more promotion of the various initiatives that have been established to protect women in St. Lucia. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzalez.
The president of the National Council on Public Transportation has expressed concerns over the futures of minibus operators under the new state of emergency stipulations. Godfrey Ferdinand explained why, under the current laws in place, in addition to the already implemented protocols set where they are not allowed to carry full loads of passengers, the majority of minibus operators will not be able to continue operating.
We are still in this kind of mood in terms of operating with 25% of the workforce actually taking public transport or less. It looks like it's less than 25%. That means that our guys, operators, are unable to meet their financial commitments. As I speak to you, many have approached their financial institutions requesting for assistance from the financial institutions.
Ferdinand said help is being sought for the drivers with hopes of making a settlement with one bank and one credit union.
As a council, we are now in discussion with at least one or two, well, I should say I know for sure one financial institution that we are speaking to. However, we would want to have one credit union we are speaking to and one bank. Presently, we are speaking to one bank that is looking at some of the recommendations that we will be presenting to them, and that is reduce interest rate, a reduced of the loan payment until 2022 or January, and also the refinancing of most of these loans. And also purchasing loans or buying bank loans from other financial institutions.
The NCOPT president is also calling on the government to work with the council and its drivers.
We are also looking at discussions with, the government. We've always had discussions with them, but we want to further the discussion by creating new, new scenarios in the discussions that we are having with the government. And one of these scenarios is that of taxation and also fuel. So at our next meeting with the government, we will be presenting that, and we're hoping that before the month is over, we will have some positive reviews from the government as well as the financial institutions that we are speaking to.
Ferdinand said the council is hoping to work directly with one or two insurance companies that will be able to reduce the set payments during the pandemic. This is the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Stay with us because we have more news after this break.